Hello, everyone. Welcome to this roundtable. I have invited Claire Venetsanakou, who is based in Greece, and Claire Pedrick, who is based in the UK, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
And we are here today for storytelling about presence. And I decided to do this, and actually it was Claire Vene's idea. Hey, why don't we do a roundtable? And I said, okay, so let's do something that is more about stories, because presence is believed to be one of the key drivers of effectiveness in coaching. And it is said to be the place, that forms the cradle of powerful questions, like the place where powerful questions are born. And we have so many concepts around presence, from cocooning with the client to being in the here and now, being fully there, being present, listening actively, listening deeply, being more and doing less, and many, many more. And we just thought, okay, why not try to put the finger on it by sharing stories of coach-client engagements, what's happening really in the coaching room when it comes to presence. And today we would like to address 4 elements of presence that potentially make up presence. And so we've come together for the storytelling. And each one of us will share one story of presence, including one of the 4 elements. The one is the I, like the coach sphere, or the client sphere individually, like the I sphere, we call it. Then the we sphere, the relational presence, the space, the relationship between the coach and the client. Then the third one, something that we call the all sphere, which we define as the context or many contexts. It can range from the simple room that we are in to some noise that emerges in the process of coaching, or the social environment that either the coach or the client brings with them into the coaching room, etc. Or the organizational space, or much more. And then there's the 4th one, is the omnisphere, which I like referring to as the cultural element, the coaches and the clients' philosophy of life, even the biological state of health, like our own biology, the social wholeness, actually. In other words, my worldview, my cultural identity, the color of my skin, my gender, whether or not I'm sick or chronically ill, potentially. So all these elements that I, in my research, have found to be present when it comes to presence in coaching. So are you ready, ladies?
Yeah.
To rumble. So to the story.
Yes.
So who would like to start? Who has got a story to tell about the I sphere or the we sphere?
I've got a story about the I sphere or the we sphere. So, and actually I'm telling it because I want you to help me make sense of it.
Super.
Because this didn't happen. It didn't happen very long ago. So what happened was, this was our first session. The man, he booked by email with me. And he came to have coaching with me because he's read my book. And there was, I can't even remember what the subject of the coaching was, but it was something about being very stuck about something. So we had a really brief chat on the phone, agreed to have a session. He wanted 4 sessions. I said, we don't know how many sessions we need. So let's meet and have a session and then work out what to do. So we have the first session online. He's standing up, I'm sitting down. That's just a fact on the side. And what was interesting was, it was quite difficult to work out what the work was. So he was saying he was stuck. He was reporting he was stuck, and we were trying to work out what the work was, and that was taking, well, it was about 20 minutes in, I think. And he said to me, I'm not making this very easy for you, am I? Which I thought was and I said, this is absolutely fine, not a problem at all, because he'd read my book, which is about making the work the right size, and he realized that we were struggling to make the work the right size, but that was okay. Anyway, about 20 minutes in, I said to him, can I say what I see? And he went, yeah. And I said, as you're talking, I notice a look on your face when you talk about certain things in the story. And he went, oh, so I did the face. And I said, I wonder what it is. And he said, I don't know. What do you think? And I said, well, I noticed that you pull that face when you talk about what, I can't even remember what, when you talk about whatever. And I'm just wondering if it's fear or something. At which point his body went, there was a visceral, ooh. And he went, it's like having an electric shock. I can feel this in my body. I never feel things in my body. And the really interesting lesson for me about presence was that I could hear myself in my head going, is he okay? Has he had a heart attack? Is this part of the coaching? Has he had an insight? What's going on? And of course, he is all over the place trying to make sense of a visceral physical experience that he doesn't normally have. So we sort of sat with it for about stood with it for about 20 minutes. And interestingly, there was an external thing in that there was an internet issue and he got cut off and he came back. And my way of dealing with that is just to go, where are we now when they come back, so that we don't have a big thing about the internet breaking up. So it took him about 20 minutes to come to terms with what his insight was. And he wasn't able to articulate his insight in words, but he was able to feel his insight in his body, which wasn't what he normally does, he said. And then I said to him, when it felt like we were settling a bit, I said, so where are we? And he said, well, everything's changed. And I said, well, what do we need to do now? And he just sort of went, And I said, it feels to me as though actually the best thing for us to do now is to finish. And it feels as though you just need to simply come to terms with what you know now in your body, and that will seep through into other parts of you. And he went, is that okay? And I went, yes, of course. And then I said, it also feels to me as though we've gone way past the goal for your coaching. So I'm just wondering whether we actually don't know if we need session 2 or not, because we may have done more than enough. So I leave it with you. You know, there's no obligation for you to come back for session 2. You just need to live with it. So that is my example of presence, which is the most extreme example I've ever experienced. And it happened quite recently. And I can remember it was in the early evening, which is later than I normally coach. And I went into the kitchen. I think my husband wondered what had happened, because I think I felt a bit shocked, because my feeling was that he had felt a bit shocked by the insights that he'd had. So that's my story.
What is the punchline for you?
The punchline is presence can be demonstrated in all kinds of ways, and it might look like a heart attack, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a question about this?
Yes.
What do you think was the client's need that he was bringing to coaching?
That's a really good question. And about 20 things just went through my head. I think the need he was bringing to coaching was to listen to himself.
And then he had his heart attack almost, without listening to himself.
I think that his body told him something that his thinking self hadn't been able to. And it was really scary and took all the courage and bravery that is required in coaching for me not to think that something awful had happened or that I'd done something wrong by saying what I saw. And to just sit with it. And honestly, normally in coaching, sitting with it is actually, when you see me sitting with it, I am sitting with it. Honestly, on that day, I think when he saw me sitting with it, I wasn't quite sitting with it. I was dealing with myself, dealing with it at the same time as we were sitting together. So I think that Zoom is an interesting thing because you can see yourself. I don't think he will have seen that I'm going, what on earth just happened here? But that's actually what I was thinking. Pretty quickly, because he said, I've just had this feeling. And I said really quickly, and he said, I never do that. And I just said, is that okay? Is having that feeling okay? And he went, oh yeah, it is actually. And then so I settled very quickly, but it was just interesting. For me, I've thought about that a lot over the last few weeks and months, that actually that was a really extraordinary example of presence that was so not what I normally experience or expect.
So I think at the beginning you said you are not so sure if it's it belongs to the I sphere or the we sphere.
Yeah. Because I think there was his I, and then there was my I, and then there was our we.
And what was the need between the two of you then? What was that joint need, the relational need?
I think the relational need was to have the courage to be. Yeah. I think the relational need was to be courageous together.
And what was your need as a coach?
Well, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because when somebody comes for coaching and they say, I want you to coach me because I've read your book, that's a really bad start.
Why?
Because they've already given you some stuff that you may or may not deserve. So it has an interesting dynamic in the relationship, I think. Because it can make the coach bigger than the client. I mean, I didn't know whether he was making me bigger than him or whether you don't. But there's a lack of knowing in that space that you've got to kind of find your way in. I mean, I think trust was very high. So really interesting.
Okay, but it doesn't answer my question. Like, what was your need?
My need was to be who he needed me to be. And I think that, and because that's always my need. And I think that was tricky because I think it was difficult to work out what that was together.
Yeah, okay.
In that space, because normally you can negotiate it. But he went off into his body in a way where it wouldn't have been appropriate for me straight away to say anything, really. So negotiating and working out how we needed to be together had to wait while we just sat with the thing.
What were you really sensing in the moment in terms of really sensing in your body as well, because you said that he was then going into his soma, in his body. What were you sensing when he was touching ground?
I can remember feeling really uncomfortable in my body, but not for very long, but really feeling disturbed, you know, a real sensation of disconnection, I guess you could describe it. I can go back there, I can feel being there. So I was feeling a sense of disconnection for a very short moment when it felt like there was an earthquake. That's what if you asked me to say, how did it feel for you? I think it did feel like an earthquake. And you think, where did that come from? You know, a feeling of a bit of shock. And I felt afterwards that I still had some shock because it was so quick and so big and so unexpected.
We like focusing on the differentiation between what you sense in the body, what you perceive then based on that sensing, like, do I see something? Do I hear something? Am I touched by something? And then what that sensing, or do I taste something potentially? Does the story that I'm hearing or what thing that I'm experiencing, does it taste in it? Does it have a flavor? What's the flavor that's having? And then based on that sensing, what is the perception that I have? What is the qualities and attributes that I'm giving the story? And then how I'm feeling about this. And the way you are talking, I asked, it was interesting because I asked you, like, what were you sensing? And you gave me the feeling. But it sounds like you were touched.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the great thing is that when that happens early and I think because it was very early in the relationship and very early in the conversation, you've kind of got to really trust the process. And
you mean you as a coach, you have to go to trust the process?
Yeah. Yeah, because all I did was say that I noticed there was a look. It wasn't like I'd asked a question with any form of words. I just said, can I say that I noticed that when you say that, there's a look? You know, because sometimes in coaching, you build up to something, don't you? And you can feel it coming. You can notice that there are things going on and that something's emerging, whereas this was just a boom.
You also said something around this. So first you said heart attack, so that you used the metaphor of heart attack, and then the analogy of the earthquake. How do they go together or not?
It felt like everything shook. It actually felt like I'm sure it didn't, but it actually felt like everything shook. And it felt like I was watching something. You know, I remember watching the Twin Towers on TV before, with my very small children, before I realized what we were watching and switched it off. But when you're watching something happening, you think, is this really happening?
You know what, like when you were telling me the story, I don't know how clear, how you perceive this thing, but I really felt, so this drama, the thing that came up for me was like, wow, there's drama in terms of like something, so the client is bringing in a lot of drama. And you also said something, and you said it's on the sideline, so he was standing and you were sitting. I just wonder how that also already set the stage for the drama, because everything matters.
Yeah, everything matters.
Everything matters, actually.
Yeah, and because it was the first session, I didn't know whether he was going to be sitting or standing. And he got going really quickly. And I made a choice about the environment not to lift my desk and stand, because I had felt that would have been disruptive of the process. Mm-hmm. So I made a choice to stay seated, although I might have chosen to stand later on.
Or you might have chosen to just address it.
Yeah.
What are we going to do together about this?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what is happening when there is this mismatch between, how the two people are showing up. There is a lot of information in this.
Totally.
Which brings us to the oosphere. And yes. I mean, okay, so it's the three of us, like Claire.
Yes, I just wanted to ask something, Claire. May I?
Yeah.
A lot of things had happened in that setting, and you also experienced sensing and feeling and perceiving. I don't want to characterize them as difficult, but they were acute. No, earthquake, heart attack, so they were acute. Mm-hmm. And you were also saying in a certain point that you felt yourself in instances, thinking what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, etc. So I admire through your narrative your way of navigating through the situation and your responsiveness on that in the moment. But I'm curious to know, what was it for you that really helped you into this situation to detach easily yourself from what's happening in yourself and being responsive in what's happening to the relationship?
Yeah. I think my philosophy in coaching is that everything is normal. And I needed to check out that it wasn't medical, because that was my instant response was a version of, is this medical? As soon as it was clear it wasn't medical, I think I was able to go back into a much more steady version of presence for me. Mm-hmm. Because if something's medical, you've got to deal with it in a different way. So I think that was my number one question. And I think as soon as it was clear that that wasn't what had happened, then I felt much more able to steady myself and continue with the conversation. And of course, the work had been done by that moment of transformation. So actually the fact that we sort of sat with it for like 20 more minutes, I was really okay to sit with it and not to try and find out what work needed to be done, because clearly the work had been done. And he was just kind of making sense of stuff and coming to terms with stuff. So actually pretty much everything I did in the next 20 minutes was simply being present and bearing witness to him kind of coming to terms with what it was that had happened, and the fact that he couldn't explain it, but he could feel it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Wow. What a beautiful storytelling.
Exactly.
I love the fact that every single person we work with, that we coach, is our teacher.
Oh.
And my goodness, he was a great teacher.
And what is it like? You said that you're bringing the story in, and you cannot make sense yourself of like where to locate it in terms of presence. So having talked with us or having shared your story, where are you sitting with this? To what extent has it become clearer where it belongs to, or what's?
I think that in the telling, it often becomes clearer. That's why we go to supervision, right? And I've had a supervision session since then, but I knew that I was coming here, so I didn't take it to supervision because I thought it would be better to bring it here unprocessed.
Oh. Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that you want to make sense of and learn from, but it wasn't an emergency learning. There wasn't emergency learning required in order for me to have another, you know, so I just thought I'd leave it and bring it here. So I think probably my biggest insight is in response to what you said, Claire, which is presence is a learning of a lifetime, isn't it? And we invest in our formation as human beings and as coaches through all of the experiences that we have over time. And I think it was when I said, once I realized it wasn't medical, I was able to settle. And I think that there's an insight there about actually sometimes we do need to completely move into a different zone, even if it's only for a few seconds, in service of something bigger. And the art, that's when you think, oh, perhaps I do know quite a lot about this, is that you can come back and settle pretty quickly afterwards. So yeah, because often presence is a co-created thing, isn't it? And it builds up gently and generously and slowly. And it was just to take another view of it. It is some useful learning about what it feels like, what it looks like, how we are with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening, both of you.
I learned a lot of things through your story today, Claire.
Yes, so it's building up, so it's co-created, and both are actually impacted by each other. That's actually the big thing that I like highlighting. Always, like, we cannot detach, and it doesn't make sense to detach, which doesn't mean that we are not settling, so that we are not working with it, but detaching and doing as if we were not part of that, what's happening there with them. I'm not sure if it's really helpful and effective.
I think if I detached, he'd have probably exited the room.
One off, standing.
I think he'd probably have just left the room, because you've got to be very present, haven't you?
Mm.
And that means that the human has to be very present.
A human, yeah. With all that, even with your acuteness, as Claire Rene was saying, like,
yeah.
So acute, and then so to stay with it and work with it, not detach from it.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, so happy to move on?
Yes. So this is the beautiness of the presence-ness, the complexity, but also the beauty, exactly, of how when you're navigating into this, the learnings and the insights are huge.
And mutual.
Yes, and mutual. It's true. I will share a different story in a way that it is not from a coaching setting and session perspective, but it is more from a training setting. I was delivering a training some months ago, and due to different circumstances and elements that they weren't there, like some clarifications of expectations, the participants, they didn't know each other, although they were from the same company, the virtual setting, some light also technological issues. all of those elements that they were showing up, that there was something in the room that needed to be addressed. But till then, as the training was evolving, those elements, they were there. And only when that happened to be addressed, I mean, unfortunately, near the end of the training, the participants started expressing freely themselves and changing their different viewpoints, their expectations, and even their heavy feelings, you know, of the situation that it was there. And I sensed that there was something that needed to be said, that needed to be addressed. And I sensed that from the beginning, but I wasn't feeling, I was not feeling fully certain. And I remember like wanting for some more clues to happen, no, to see, to sense, am I really right? Do I really need to trust my instinct? Do what I'm sensing is really there? So in instances, those questions, but the fact is that I haven't addressed it. So have I been present enough to pay attention to all those social, even organizational, I'll say, but even training session settings? I can say that I felt present because I sensed the different nuances. But again, am I really present in terms of responsiveness? So I didn't respond promptly as the contextual situation was disclosing me, in order exactly to enhance this sharing, enhance this even healing of the situation, not express what happened in the room in that moment. As Claire, you managed the situation you've discussed, you shared before. And also to enhance even maybe the success, no, of the interrelation, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality, no, the interrelation. So that was the first situation that I just wanted to share. And it was a peculiar and unprecedented moment for me, but I guess for everyone. What I learned from the situation is that when you're sensing something in the room, so metaphorical, no, any kind of room or setting, I learned to pause, to share, to deal, to ask, to mirror what I'm seeing as a situation. So to deal with what really happening, or what I'm perceiving, or what I'm sensing in the moment. So to place it in the viewpoint of all. That was my biggest learning moment from that. And why, of course, because what I said to myself, because I can identify, I can experience less pressure. I was feeling the pressure that I was feeling in the moment. So once you do that, it's like there is less pressure in you, the heaviness that we're, even the responsibility that we sense. We need to, I have to do this. So I need to bring the solution into the setting. So all those heaviness, and even I feel less frustration, because I was also experiencing a sort of frustrating frustration with myself in the moment. So while when you're opening up the situation, this sharing, this mirroring, and it's like there is this shifting, even of the position of dominance. I do not dominate the situation. So I'm shifting the position to everyone, to the all, to share, to exchange, to have this, even share, if I can say that, a shared responsibility, to deal with. In whatever ways, in whatever modes, but just to deal and to be open and transparent with everyone. So I'm feeling that could have helped to rebalance the situation, rebalance energies, and could have brought the situation in different ways. That is the first situation that I experienced it. And I have another one, which is more happy, a different one, and it's not virtual. Maybe the virtual environment have made the situation even more complicated than it was. Maybe not, I don't know. Maybe we can address that and we can think a little bit more on that. So that was the first virtual setting that I experienced. Do you want to say something, or can I said and share also the other part to see the differences? And
I'm happy to hear the second story.
Do you, Claire, as well?
Yeah.
Okay. In another setting, again, training, which was held face-to-face, I was facilitating the training, and at the beginning, from the very start of the training, you could sense a sort of tension, a sort of huge amount of energy that it was directed into different ways and directions. Participants were having discussions all together, and there were voices everywhere in the room. So I was finding myself in a bizarre situation as I was perceiving all this noise coming into me. And second, because I wasn't able to hear what they actually were saying, and I find myself also in this difficulty of facilitating and relating more with the group. So what I did was I just stopped for seconds, just observe them and pay attention to what was happening in the room in that moment. And then right away, I shared with the group what I am noticing. And that I'm noticing that they are sharing valuable things to another, to the dualities, to the different part of the groups. And I was fatiguing to hear all those precious things that they were sharing with each other. And so after this observation, they look at me without being heavy, but just looking as we're looking each other right now, and without even saying or addressing anything more, the group started behaving differently. And nothing at all, like just a very gentle shift of energy. I don't like canalizing the situation. What I learned the same instant that I felt lighter. Okay? Instantly I felt lighter, and I felt present. But not because I felt immersing. I was feeling myself being there with them, and also sensing the presence-ness of the room, of everyone there. And the other thing that amazed me in that instance was that maybe also some chairs and the flip chart position. So some elements of the room, they were hindering us. So we changed some positions. I changed positions. Some of them has changed positions. So we had kind of changed our space there. And we continue with the flow and the facilitation and the training, all the setting that we wanted now to have the interrelation. Could, now that I parallelize it with the previous one, could the physical, the face-to-face setting contributed more on healing? I'm using this word, maybe it's not the correct one, but to my eyes there, it was something that needed to be addressed. So I felt that after doing that and being more present to my needs and the setting needs and the other needs, the situation has changed. So maybe yes, maybe no, maybe the physical and the face-to-face and all our senses could have alerted us more instead of the virtual one, no? But again, what I realized and I can underline after this experience that I have is how important it is to feel myself free, in a way to trust my senses. So what I feel in that moment, to trust it. And so this capacity to sense, to perceive, and also to respond and bring that awareness also to others. So all those contextual elements influence now how to deal with the unknown, because it was an unknown situation that came. It wasn't pre-established. So all that thing helped in shaping the moment. That's it for me.
Claire P, have you got something to say, to share? Is there something that got your attention?
I think the thing that got my attention was the idea of presence being part of the space between. And I loved the contrasting stories because it made me think about and wonder about the virtual versus the face-to-face. And also noticing that when we're holding presence, when we're being present one-to-one, as much as it's really complex, it's actually quite simple compared to being present with a group who may or may not be being present with each other. And the thing that came to mind was when you're with animals, and an animal can sense, can't it, about how calm or activated you are, and how when you settled in that second story, your settling settled the group. So yeah. And I also noticed there was a thing about timing for me as you were talking about when do you sense it and when do you do something about it. So in that first one, it felt like you sensed it early and you held it. And that kind of is something, there's wisdom in holding, but there's also something about taking responsibility in holding that has the opposite impact. So that there's some really interesting stuff there. And thank you for sharing the two, because it gave insight into the other.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Absolutely, because for me, it's also the question today. So what I'm hearing is the all sphere a lot, like how the all sphere is impacting our presence, our level of presence. And It can be a virtual setting, but it can also be just organizational pressure, team pressure, people pressure, anything that is there. Like, for example, what I'm not sure if you noticed that at the beginning I had my glasses on, and then I took my glasses off because I can see that your eyes, I can't see your eyes actually, ladies, because it's mirrored through this setting. So something like this, for example, when we're working in with clients and we're wearing glasses and they can't see our eyes actually, because how can we really sense and see, because like see each other really when we've got glasses on, but we have to have glasses on because I just took them off and I was using myself and like listening to your stories because it was more important for me to not have my eyes being mirrored in the glasses. So stuff like this is so important. It can influence how we can make sense. The light in which actually, literally, the light in which we can see someone is influencing our way of presence. And then, of course, the timing. What are we sharing it? Because it's present, it's there. And I do remember that when I was doing my research, that the prompting moment for doing the research was a critical moment like that. That I was also holding pressure from the organization, and I was not sharing it with the client in the moment, in a timely moment. And it actually, that not sharing it and holding the pressure showed in my body how I was not present, and the client picked it up. So it really did not, the holding of that pressure did not facilitate clients learning. We learned a lot through that though, but just because she was courageous enough to name it, she was the better coach in that moment. Yeah, cool. So to be mindful of our time, actually, I will be very happy to just briefly tell you one story, one phenomenon. It's a recent story, and it relates to the omnisphere, the cultural element of it. So it's I was sitting with a client, it's a female client, and just recently, and we reached a moment of stuckness where she felt that she could not share more. She could not share more about something. And then what I did in that moment was I asked her, let me just see like what I asked her. What else do you want me to know about you? And then she said something. She said, you know what? I don't know what I say because I never learned. I learned because I'm colorful, and she had a different color, so she was black. I never learned to share openly, say things. I learned that being colorful is not good, and I have to shut my mouth up. So what I would like to exemplify with this story is how race, our colorfulness. I didn't know, I would never have guessed at the beginning that would create a stuckness moment, a moment of stuckness. And then being present to that cultural difference. It's like, what else do you want me to know about you? She realized, and she actually brought up this point of, you know what, it's like, I never learned because of my colorfulness to speak. So being present to Omni, more than just what is being spoken, but the unspoken, like more, that there's more. Let's notice more than we used to notice. Notice gender, notice colorfulness, notice probably, we never know if people come in with illness or feeling sick. Or we women have our biological fate, yeah? So we have monthly periods, so, and we might not feel good. We bring in our moods with those biological states of feeling well or not well. And all these things play out and might create moments of, I don't know, like we had this moment of stuckness. So my story, I just wanted to exemplify because it was such a striking example for me, again, about, it's not about what's being said, it's about culture. Culture is in the room. To stay present to more than what we are used to noticing. to notice beyond noticing, because there's so much more to presence than just the you and the I and the relationship.
What I love about that is that you didn't notice it out loud. You gave her permission to notice it through that beautiful question.
Well, I think I said today that I believe it's my experience that powerful questions do not come from a list of learned questions. It comes from a place of presence. When we can really sit with, like, what else hasn't been addressed or not noticed yet. So because I didn't have it on a list of questions.
Good. Good.
Okay, so ladies, do you have a word of goodbye to our audience to wind up our storytelling today?
I guess that our response or indicates our reflection and our thinking, or our need to offer in the audience the silence, which is so precious, and offer also information and insights. But I have something to share to the audience, to connect, to interrelate, to share what this huge topic and important competence. It's not only a topic, it's a great competence of presence could land with them after the stories they have heard. What is it that they can learn through our stories, or what they can show us more through our storytelling? No, what they can mirror us to us.
To share with us.
Yes.
Thank you. Love it.
For me, I think it's a challenge, isn't it, to remember that to enable another to be deeply human, I also need to be deeply human, and that it's a journey of a lifetime. You can't go, I've got that competency now. It's a journey, yeah, it's a journey of a lifetime to be deeply human, to enable someone else to be deeply human.
And it's, yeah, and I would like to add to that for me, there's no such thing as I've learned to be present, I'm done.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
What crap is this? Sorry. And I know I'm present. I don't know. That's my learning, to be humble about this, and yeah, I've been really inspired, like so many times through clients. Notice beyond noticing. There's so much more to notice than we are noticing, or we are used to noticing. So that's what I would like to share, and also to pick up what Claire Vinay has said. We are so happy to learn from you what you have taken away from our stories. And thank you very much for listening in. And thank you, ladies, for offering up your stories, and happy thriving.
Yeah. And thank you to our teachers.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh,
all the people we coach, which is where we learn the presence from. So
yes. Not in the books and not in the trainings. Well, we do, but it's from the clients. Yeah.
Yes, so true.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.